Welcome to New Ideas, Lesson 1, Part 2. The Renaissance begins. Grazie, Signora. Thank you for joining us, Primavera. Tell them about my time. Arrivederci. Yes, a quick preview of main ideas. The Renaissance began as people became confident in the future. The Renaissance sparked a renewed interest in ancient Greek and Roman ideas, which were particularly familiar to Italians. Artists and scholars found the financial and cultural support they needed to flourish in Italy's wealthy urban cities. Italy's urban society and scholars produced many great works of art and literature. We've learned the importance of trade along the Silk Road with China. Today we're going to be looking at Marco Polo. Okay, so in the 1270s, the merchant Marco Polo, you'll think 1270, it was the Renaissance? No, I know the Renaissance didn't begin until the 1400s. See? And so? Marco Polo's book about his journey whet the Italians' appetite with desire for goods from the Orient. It set the stage for more trade and more wealth in the Renaissance. I see. Continue. Marco Polo made numerous expeditions to China. He published stories about his trips in his autobiography, The Travels of Marco Polo. The book created great excitement among Europeans, many of whom had never even left their villages. For many, reading the vivid accounts of adventures in a land as distant and mysterious as China may have been as strange and exotic as reading about life on another planet would seem today. Marco Polo wrote, leaving the city of Yachi and traveling 10 days in a westerly direction, you reach the province of Karazhan, which is also the name of its chief city. Marco Polo had some new ideas about economic decisions. It made him rich and had historical consequences. Who was Marco Polo? In the 1270s, the merchant Marco Polo, his father, and his uncle left Venice and traveled to China. Their goal was to meet Kublai Khan, the Mongol emperor of China. When the Polo family reached the Khan's court, the emperor was amazed by stories that Marco Polo told of his travels. Kublai sent Marco Polo on fact-finding trips all over China. Polo learned more about Asia than any other European. After returning to Europe, Polo wrote a book about his adventures. His stories about life in China amazed Europeans, who then wanted to buy Chinese goods. Let's talk about Florenzia. Florence, a Renaissance city. The city of Florence was the first major center of the Renaissance. Its wealth and central location attracted many artists, sculptors, writers, and architects. Florence lies on the banks of the Arno River in central Italy. The city was surrounded by walls with tall towers for defense. Soaring above the city was the dome of the cathedral. A local architect, Filippo Brunelleschi, completed the dome in 1436. It is considered to be the greatest engineering achievement of the time. Florence gained its wealth from making and trading cloth made from English wool. Citizens of Florence also made money from banking, which included lending money and charging interest as goods poured into Italy from abroad. Merchants had to determine the value of currency, or money, from different countries. Florentine bankers used the florin, a gold coin of Florence, to measure the value of their money. The city's wealthiest family, the Medici, owned the largest bank in Europe during the 1400s. The Medici had branch banks or other offices as far away as Flanders. The dome of the cathedral in Florence, Italy, which became a symbol of the city when it was completed in 1436. It was considered a great architectural design of its time. The cathedral's dome measures 140 feet across. Another famous landmark in Florence is the massive cathedral of Santa Maria del Fiore, or El Duomo, the dome. The Duomo is a fine example of Renaissance architecture. Common elements of Renaissance buildings are statues, murals, and domes. The sculptor Arnolfo di Cambio began work on El Duomo in 1296. Many local artists continued to build it over the next 150 years. The painter Giotti designed the bell tower in 1334, and sculptor Filippo Brunelleschi designed the cupola, the structure above the dome, along with the dome itself. El Duomo, the third largest cathedral in the world, is located in central Florence and can be seen from almost any street in the city. Although El Duomo was designed in the Gothic style, by 1366, leading Renaissance sculptors and artists decided that all new work, including the massive dome, should include elements of classic Greek and Roman architecture. However, they used different materials, bricks, and red became a common color. Around 1415, Brunelleschi, who had been making statues for the cathedral, designed and built a model of the dome. The model was unusual because it did not have the support of a framework. Instead, Brunelleschi knew that using horizontal layers would give it the needed stability. His bold design was accepted, and work continued in 1420. Brilliant, complex frescoes showing religious scenes decorate the inside of the massive dome. The windows of the cupola allow natural light to illuminate the works of art in the cathedral. Venice, a city of canals. Another leading Renaissance city was Venice. Located on the northern coast of the Adriatic Sea in eastern Italy, Venice was built on many small islands. Venetians drove long wooden poles into mud to support their buildings. Instead of paving roads, the Venetians built canals and used boats for transportation around the city. Even today, Venice's canals and waterways serve as streets. During the Renaissance, Venice became an important link between Europe and Asia. Venetian merchants such as Marco Polo traveled abroad and made contacts with Eastern civilizations. The city also was known as a major shipbuilding center. In a part of the city called the Arsenal, teams of workers built wooden ships and also made sails and oars. In our last lesson, we talked about identifying the effects and making a graphic organizer of the characteristics of Italy and its influence on the Renaissance. One characteristic was Italian cities were wealthy. The influence could be that wealthy people could pay for art to be produced. The second characteristic we examined was Italy was the heart of the old Roman Empire. One possible result is that the ancient art and architecture inspired new works. A third characteristic of Italy was that many Italians lived in cities instead of rural areas. This influence on the Renaissance could be that new ideas were more readily exchanged in cities where populations were bigger. Italy's fourth characteristic was that stronger economies developed. The influence on the Renaissance could be that more customers for artists, more money, and new kinds of art. Number 3 in your inquiry journal poses a question about economics. Why were the Italian states able to maintain independence and prosper during the Middle Ages? Be sure and fill this out. You might consider that Italy's small states engaged in trade and banking, and so wealthy bankers and merchants loaned money to the rulers of European countries. And the rulers did not want to destroy that relationship. We will be finishing up Chapter 10, Lesson 1 in our next video. Until then, arrivederci, arrivederci. Be as good girls and boys, children. You listen to your teacher and do your work. Oh, cute little puppy, you come home with me.